you let us know which public officials are with us this evening?
Bart Sylvester, Safety Service Director.
Present.
Assistant Law Director Edmund Mack. Economic Development Director David May.
Present.
Is there anyone from administration I missed? That's it, President Pro Tem.
All right, please let the record show that all 9 members of council are present, and we also have the president of council with us this evening. Community development.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I have one new item. This request has been recommended and approved by the City Planning Commission. It is for a rezoning request of 3 parcels, 602444, 612864, 600668. All 3 parcels are on Oak Avenue Southeast. The zone change is from a B2 Central Business District to an R1, one-family residential. And the purpose of this rezoning is to allow for the construction of a new home. Would someone from administration please come forward and give us a background regarding this request?
Good evening. Madam Chairman, this is for a rezoning there you mentioned on Oak Avenue. There are 3 parcels, as you mentioned. They are in the process of replatting those 3 parcels to build a house for an individual. Currently, I think they have somebody in mind that would be purchasing structure when they get it built. Allison Harvey from Habitat is here if you have any questions for her.
I just have, before we move forward, since it is Zone B2 Central Business District, what is around these 3 parcels that the zone requests?
Yes, I actually provided a map. I'm not sure if it came out in color though. It might be black and white. Unfortunately, the parcels that we're discussing here are all in red, but I think it'd probably be a different shade for you guys, maybe a little darker. It's like a big square. Those are all B2s, and then surrounding it mostly is all R1 residential.
So it would be up against a B2 business.
That's correct.
I would like to have that representative come forward and tell us a little bit about the request.
Hi, my name is Allison Harvey with Habitat for Humanity. As Mr. Manley presented, we are looking to build a new home for an individual in our homeownership program. This will be a low-income individual who's in need of affordable housing. The individual that we have in mind would really benefit from close access to downtown, and land in the downtown area of Massillon is a bit hard to come by, so these properties were acquired from a couple of private owners. There were previously homes on this property, I believe a home on each of the current parcels that were demolished many years ago. There is also another residential structure on the block that would be next to the home that we would construct, and with the exception of the across Oak Avenue, the complex there, and the YMCA, most of the surrounding properties as well are residential.
Thank you. Any council members have any questions for Mr. Maley or Ms. Harvey? Yes, Mr. Lombardi.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Is there just going to be one house put on all 3 lots?
That's correct. The map, I'm not sure how well it shows it, I'm not looking at it myself, but the 2 parcels on the side are rather small, and putting a home on either one of those or attempting to situate more than one home on the property would be rather difficult with zoning regulations.
Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. Has anybody heard from the YMCA? Are they for the pro, against? I'm just kind of curious if they've been notified.
They have obviously should be aware of it based on the mailings that we sent out. I have not heard anything in person from,
Okay, I was just wondering if there was any objections or from anybody.
I don't know if Allison has or not.
I've not personally, I know they are aware of it, and I know they had, I believe, been using the land, but it was never under their ownership, and there wasn't a formal agreement in place, and they were never able to purchase the property from the previous owners, so I'm not sure what happened there.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hurricane?
Thank you, Mrs. Kramer. Who was the prior owner, may I ask?
There were two individuals who were the private owners. I believe they had purchased it together. The one owner and the parent of the other owner were longtime friends, and so they had owned the homes together and they were rentals.
Did they were torn down?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? We're with Diane, and this will be placed on the agenda, thank you, Ms. London. On the agenda, the meeting, we have a public hearing scheduled for August 21st, 2023 at 6 p.m. here in Council Chambers.
And the YMCA will be giving a notice about that public hearing also. They're on the mailing list.
The only other item I have is, falls under old business. It is ordinance number 55-2023. This ordinance is requesting that we amend section 1137.08, frequency of application under chapter 1137, changes and amendments of Title 3 zoning administration, part 11, planning and zoning code. This request is changing applications by a property owner to change in the zoning district of any property of record can be submitted only once in any 24-month period with the following, and then there's exceptions. Currently, requests can be made every 12 months. So this request is extending that to 24 months. Anyone have any questions regarding this? There was a short conversation prior to me coming up to my seat this evening from Mr. Maley. I just kind of want to open it up, have him come up and speak. There's been some conversations previously about adding additional variants, and I know this was Mr. Kirby who brought this forward, so I kind of want to at least hear, since we had a very quick conversation, have council hear what I heard and ask me questions if need be.
I'm sorry, I was in another conversation. Were you talking about the 12, 24?
Yes, 12 to 24.
Yeah, and I know I think I've expressed this to Mr. Hurricane. One concern that we have had from an administrative point of view would be that if something came forward, so I'll use this as an example. We recently turned down rezoning for Menards, which we thought was a really nice piece of property, and we didn't want storage units in that facility that are located next to it. If somebody came, for example, we turned it down, and 6 months later, somebody came to Menards with an attractive opportunity, we might be hamstringing ourselves with regards to allowing for a rezoning because we have to wait another year and a half. I just bring that up for food for thought.
Mr. Hurricane.
My response to that would be the same thing would apply currently at 12 months or whether it's 5 years or 10 years. If the Planning Commission thought that there was an opportunity that they would want to request council to pass a resolution or an ordinance to allow them to hear that is what would happen now under the 12-month guidelines. So I don't see any reason why in that circumstance, and it would have to be a very worthwhile circumstance for them to want to come to us and say, probably give a variance on our own ordinance or something like that. But there are exceptions currently in the code, and just to Mr. Maley's point, should that happen, the Planning Commission can ask, and we'll deal with that.
Yeah, I know Mr. Wise is not here, our general counsel. We had had discussions with regards to the ability of council possibly being able to move forward throughout this exception. And I think that's a viable alternative. I hope it's a viable alternative. One of the things we were discussing this maybe to make sure that that language was clear, because I don't think it was clear to me how that process would work. And that's one of the things that we had talked about, maybe trying to look at that language to make sure that we understood what that process looked like. But those are discussions we can have, but I don't want to get too involved in this.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
So you might understand that the goal of this legislation, that it's essentially by going from 1 year to 2 years, is to keep someone from coming back every year trying to get the rezoning, correct? And that's it. That's the only goal.
Mr. Hermke can speak to that.
The goal is twofold. Yes, in one instance, it is to provide some comfort to residents in neighborhoods affected by rezonings that tend to be more frequent. And two, I personally believe that a longer period is appropriate from our standpoint. Council term is 2 years, and anything less than that, I find hard to believe that a term of council hearing a second request of the exact same thing would be inclined to change their mind any different. So I think a term of council hearing a rezoning request once is appropriate, because a 2-year window would then obviously put that into a different term of council. So there's a neighborhood concern, and then there's just, in my mind, a logistical concern from our timing standpoint.
I think only aspects, I understand the neighborhood concern, because we obviously have one big hitter that we've been dealing with over the last 4 years. But I also tend to not want to formulate legislation that governs the entire city over one entity that would cause the hesitation. My only concern is that if we're supposed to be pro-economic development, why would we do anything that would handcuff anyone from being able to continue to move forward on the development of property for the benefit of the community? And I kind of would, I don't know, I'll kick it around a little bit more, but I kind of would have some similar concerns as Dave, Mr. Maley just said, like, if someone comes and presents us an opportunity and gets turned down, well, in 12 months, they have a new opportunity. They can't do anything for 2 years. That kills some business opportunities in the community. And if we start thinking or talking about ways of, well, if we design this side of or avenue over here where they come to council so they get around it, then why the heck do you do it in the first place? The minute you start designing things to get around the very thing you created, it kind of makes it a moot point in the first place, if you're following me. So I want to think a little bit more about it. What were you guys coming up on?
Third reading.
So I got 2 weeks.
And I'm going to reach out to Mr. Wise also.
Oh.
Maybe other additional questions? All right, that's all for community development. Thank you.
Economic development,
Nothing from economic development this evening.
health, welfare, building.
I have nothing new, but I would like to address the plan brought forward by the administration a few weeks ago in reference to Chapter 1331, the registration of vacant buildings. That is not on the agenda. I feel the plan is basically an attempt to increase fees on landlords while not really addressing the main issue we have downtown. I agree with Mr. Lewis when he said that every couple of years the administration wants to increase fees, but it doesn't address the real problem. They proposed legislation for rental units in 2014 and vacant buildings in 2019, and we have the same problems today that we had before. We have had several committee meetings on this subject, and a lot of ideas were discussed. The only one that makes sense to me is mandating inspections every 5 years for buildings in the B2 Central Business District, since that encompasses the downtown historic buildings we are focusing on. This will ensure that code enforcement will physically be in those buildings on a regular basis, and hopefully those inspections can detect and address any structural problems before they become disasters. There are other things we discussed during our meetings, but I don't think they will do much to address the real problem we have. The real answer to our problem is working with property owners, developers, and our downtown organizations. We need to let them know of incentives available to restore these buildings. The city has a community reinvestment area program that provides tax incentives for commercial and residential projects. The state of Ohio and the federal government both offer historic preservation tax credits that significantly benefit those who restore buildings. Those are some of the things I think we need to address, and we will consider this in the future. Thank you.
Parks and Rec,
I have nothing for Parks and Rec.
Police and Fire.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I have one new item, and that's to accept a donation of $500 for National Night Out from the Fraternal Order of Eagles, number 190. National Night Out is an annual community building event that promotes police, community partnerships, and neighborhood camaraderie. And this event is celebrated nationwide on the first Tuesday of every August. Are there any questions from any of the committee members or any other council members? I'll be signing this and putting it on the agenda for Monday. Thank you.
Public Utilities,
No business this evening, thank you.
Rules and Courts.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I do have one new item. It's an ordinance authorizing the payment of the Ohio Supreme Court attorney registration fees for the attorneys in the Massillon Law Department for each attorney registration biennium period, provided the funds are available in the forfeited fund, professional dues account, such and such. These funds are already available for the 2023 to 2025 attorney registration biennium, which will cost $2,800, $400 per attorney. Attorney General Opinion 83-042 requires legislative authorization of this expenditure by ordinance. This does have emergency language on it, for the need to timely adhere to the attorney registration requirements of the Ohio Supreme Court and to avoid any possibility of the imposition of late fees or other penalties. Do we have anyone from administration that can address this? Thank you, Mr. Mack.
Thank you, Chairman. Every 2 years, attorneys in the state of Ohio have to renew their registration with the Ohio Supreme Court. The cost is $400 per attorney, but there's an attorney general opinion that says in order for us to do that with city funds, it has to be approved by the legislative body with an ordinance. This would be the only time that you would have to pass this ordinance to authorize this payment. It would be, and for every subsequent biennium, we wouldn't need the ordinance if the funds are in the specific account. As of right now, the funds are in the fund. There's an unappropriated balance of about $25,000, but they're not in the actual account that they have to be in. They're all forfeited funds, but accompanying this legislation request is then an appropriation request to move the funds from the unappropriated balance into that specific account.
So is this a new requirement?
No, it's been there since 1984. But we've not seen any record where there's been an ordinance authorizing it.
I don't recall ever having this go across my desk, so
That's why we're asking for it. And it is kind of a new age with the state auditor, to where we all got to do things, 100% correctly, because every year the auditor is going through these books with a fine-tooth comb. So we want to make sure we done it right.
So it's a gap until now.
Yep.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from others on City Council? I will we'll sign this and get this on the agenda for.
I'm not trying to be nitpicky, but this is only a legislation authorizing the payment of? How do we choose rules and courts of the committee?
There is an appropriation request that's on one of the next pages here.
Yeah, I know that's coming through finance, and this one's authorized. I'm just trying to figure out how we got to the point where that would also be financed. It's not a change of rules, civil service, or just safety pay for this.
It's an ordinance that, a new ordinance for this purpose.
I'm just trying, like I said, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. I just want to make sure we do it correctly.
Well, we've got both pieces, right? We've got this part and we've got the finance part, so it should cover it, right? Thank you, Mr. Mack.
for July 17th at 6 p.m. We can get on books. Ms. Rowan, I appreciate it. No other business from streets, highways, and traffic safety. Thank you.
Committee meeting.
July 17th, 6 p.m. Thank you.
All right, finance. We have, the first one is the appropriation of that $2,800. To be able to make that payment that previously discussed. Any questions? And then we have please prepare an ordinance to appropriate the unappropriated balance of the donation fund, National Night Out, so it's $500 that Mr. Lombardi brought up during his meeting. Then we have please prepare an ordinance to appropriate the unappropriated balance of the summer concert fund, $2,200. Reserve some contracts, $300 from concert supplies, and this is to allow for timely payment. This is just every other time we've done summer concert series. Any questions? Mr. Lombardi?
Didn't we just pay something out for the summer concert series last council?
We did. Ms. Sylvester, do you want to add? Typically, these monies that they have received as donations, they just need to pass it through. Ms. Sylvester, the question that Mr. Lombardi did ask was, considering that we just did one of these, how is this different, essentially?
Good evening. Good evening. I don't have the exact breakdown of the expenses that come in, but basically, yes, we do receive donations, as Mr. Lewis said, and then we do pay out the contractors and any other expenses through the supplies account as well. But I can give you detail if you want that on that. Why an amount was appropriated a short time ago, and then this is the additional amount to be appropriated.
Last week in council, didn't we approve legislation to pay the bills to pay a bill for this?
Yeah.
I thought that was all the expenses, so these are additional expenses that have come in? I take it?
Yes, I believe. I can get the invoice breakdown for you, because we wouldn't pay anything until the money is appropriated in there, so I can do that. I mean, we did have the banners last week as well. Was the summer concerts on there as well last week?
Yeah, if we could just see a breakdown before we go on that.
Sure, I'll send that out to you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Also, I know that in the packet was the information regarding the property downtown, formerly known as Howard's Tiger Rags. As you all know, we are still awaiting additional information, and once we have that, we'll be able to resume the conversation regarding that. That is all we have for finance. I do want to remind everybody on council and everybody in attendance that our next meeting will not be until July 10th due to the holiday, and we do have that week off. Thank you.